On this episode, I'm speaking with Tony Sousa, the VP of Marketing Relations at RPM Living. Tony's led experienced teams across the country, working on a range of asset types from value add to luxury Class A. With a background as a TV journalist prior to his experience in multifamily, Tony is passionate about people, operations, technology, culture, and his family. He's become a respected industry thought leader, providing nuanced and experienced perspectives to today's most relevant topics. Tony is currently on the board of directors for San Antonio Apartment Association and a committee member on the TAA Education Foundation. This was a super fun conversation with Tony. Let's jump right in. All right, Tony, thanks so much for hopping on today.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here, Chris.
Well, look, I know that you have a really fun piece of what I like to think of as the young Tony story that involves Elvis. And so I want to jump right in and get the audience immersed in your hometown, your family life, and this Elvis piece. Where does that come from?
Yeah, so I'm from San Jose, California, and born and raised there. Silicon Valley, capital of the world. And I was, as I am probably today, maybe not a kid anymore, but I was an eclectic kid. And I was into, I love art and drawing. I even, no surprise to anyone today, I guess, enjoyed fashion even as a young age, and was inspired, I think, by, all different sorts of casts of characters, from sports to entertainers. But one particular entertainer that you're referring to, I think really took my heart. And it was Elvis Presley. So at 9 years old, I think Elvis is probably like almost 15 years dead at this point. And I'm into Elvis at 9 years old. And so my parents, I think we're into Elvis to some extent. We started watching movies and documentaries. And for whatever reason, I was just drawn, I think, to his charisma, his style, I think his innovative style at the time. And, I start memorizing every one of his songs and start painting on my sideburns. And then we submit like an audition tape to, I forget what it was, maybe a county fair at the time, to perform in front of 3,000 people as a 9-year-old. And we win. And so I find myself at, I forget, the Sonoma County Fair, in the North Bay. Those who know the Bay Area know Sonoma County. And I'm up there with, I forget, 15, 17, 40 to 50-year-old Elvis impersonators at 9 years old. So it was a pretty intense experience. I actually remember going up on stage late, which did not make my parents happy. I think 10 o'clock was my call time to hit the stage. There was a mix of emotions happening, but ultimately, yeah, I love the character that was Elvis, and later come to really understand his story. And even, just last year when the new Elvis movie came out, my wife after the movie was like, I think you vicariously lived much of your life and adult life as Elvis Presley. And so maybe consciously or subconsciously I don't know. But yeah, he was a big influence on me as a young kid. So not a lot of 9-year-olds are doing that. I have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. And if I was to ever encourage them to say, hey, do you want to go on, be on stage and sing in front of 3,000 people, they would look at me sideways and think I was crazy. So it is a little something unique and different as I look back now as a dad of a 7-year-old, 11-year-old. That is not a unique, that is a unique experience for sure.
Yeah. My understanding that of your upbringing is that in addition to sort of the creative and musical side of your personality, you're also an athletic kid. You told me that you're into the likes of Deion Sanders, the Barry Bonds of the world. And you had a nickname that kind of alluded to, I guess, what your future was to hold at the time.
So Deion Sanders was my guy when I was younger. I was drawn to the Jose Cansecos of the world, some of the other ones as well. But yeah, as a ball player, so pretty early on, I got an earring, which back in the late '80s, early '90s, at the time for guys, it was a unique thing happening at the time. And as a young kid, my dad surprisingly was okay with it. And I got it. And, so I had a dangling little cross like Barry Bonds, and I was known as Hollywood out there. And so, it was just me being me. And I think for a lot of kids, it was a combination of things. They would tease you and call you nicknames, Hollywood or whatever. But for me, it was me just being me. I actually have a nephew out there in California who my kids don't act like me, and so maybe that's a good thing. But my nephew, he plays ball and he's very, at times flamboyant. I don't know if he has any nicknames, but my sister loves to send me photos of him rocking earrings and his big Oakleys and all that sort of. He's a baseball player like I was, and she texts me with, is this your son? It's not, but it may be in the blood. But yeah, so I just at a young age really embraced, who I was. I was willing to sort of wear that on my sleeve in a way that maybe other kids were nervous to do so, or whatever the case was. But that definitely had an evolution. I'd like to think today, since a kid, I've always, sort of had the courage to be myself at all times. The reality is, I think like a lot of us, I haven't had that courage. In high school, ridicule and being teased and other things like that. I used to dress really nicely, and so I would be teased in a lot of ways for that. My early 20s, but something that happened to me, and we may get into it a little bit later, but I moved to Los Angeles to be an actor. And when I moved to a big city, although originally from a fairly big city, San Jose, California, the Bay Area, but when you move to a big city like Los Angeles, like New York, maybe like like the UK, or something to where it's an international city, you surround yourself with a lot of people that are very different in all sorts of ways. And I think if you've been called different much of your life, and then you sort of find yourself around a lot of people willing to kind of be themselves and be different, it makes how crazy or how different you are really seem fairly tame sometimes. And so it was a good experience for me to be around people that were living out loud and living their best life and being themselves. And so as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, it was good for me to see that, to realize I'm not that weird or different, and ultimately I'm just who I am. And so I think we get caught up with place tags put on us that you're different or whatever the case is. So that's a story for anyone today that maybe gets that. And let's be honest, today professionally, I know I'm unique and my message is unique and what I wear is unique for my position or whatever I do. But it is what it is. I'm not going to change who I am because of a title or a position or a company. And the exciting thing is I work for a wonderful company that really embraces that and really, I think, allows you to do you. And that's important. And so, yeah, anyway, long story short, from Elvis to Barry Bonds to acting in Los Angeles to here I am today wearing gosh, what is this? Looks like flowers and oranges and all sorts of silly stuff.
I don't know what it is, but it looks good on you. So that's all that matters, right?
Thanks. Yeah.
Well, I want to hear a little bit more about this acting phase. So you said it was 21, 22, you moved to LA. Did you move there for school? Did you move there specifically for acting, or what was the path?
Yeah, so I studied at the University of Southern California as a broadcaster. That's what I thought. I convinced my parents that that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a TV broadcaster, and I wanted to be the news and 6 p.m. nightly news. I wanted you to see my face, and I would tell you the breaking news of the day on a national scale. So that was my goal. So I studied hard there, got good grades to get there, did well there. But if you have an ounce of charisma in Los Angeles, you quickly get talked into being an actor. And maybe I had an ounce or two of charisma at the time. Back then had probably even better hair, right? I was in better shape, and hey, why don't you be an actor? You could be the next Brad Pitt, right? And when you're 21, 22, like it's hard to really resist that, right? And so I convinced myself, hey, let's give this a try. And so I did it for a good 3+ years. Learned a whole bunch, a lot of things that I probably don't even consciously know that I utilize today. But going in front of people you don't know in an audition fashion to read lines or whatever you may be doing with 3, 4, 5 people that just blank stare or look at you and say go, and then you're to deliver high energy or emotion of the scene or connect with the person in front of you in a scene. And then when it's done, they say thanks, and that's it. You walk out, and then the 20 other guys that are more handsome, better shape, whiter teeth, all that sort of thing, walk in behind you. And, so it really, as a young man that, sometimes, you put too much stock into certain things. It helps, it definitely humbles you, if anything, in that environment, but it also gives you the courage to step into a room, deliver a scene or deliver what you need to deliver, drop the microphone, as they say, and just walk out and let it be what it is. And sometimes you get a call back and sometimes you don't.
Mm.
But you just, you have to, in your heart of hearts, just know that you delivered the best that you could in that room or in that moment. And if it wasn't good enough, that's fine. It wasn't meant to be. If it was good enough, then awesome. You get a call back.
Yeah. What were your jobs during that time? I imagine you had to keep paying rent somehow. Were any like kind of
Yeah,
fun,
well,
funny
you may know a
side
little bit
jobs?
about the art. Yeah, I mean, if as an actor, you got to be flex. So it means you got, hey, your agent calls you. I got an audition at 1. What are you doing? Well, I'm working. So it was tough to have any sort of corporate job at that time. So yes, I was a waiter, I was a caterer, I was a limousine driver, I was a substitute teacher. I did a whole bunch of different things to make money, and essentially jobs that I can sort of all do at the same time, that were flexible, that I can call someone, hey, I got an audition or I got something going on. Can you take my shift? That's a whole part of the Hollywood, audition actor life, of course. So yeah, so I've done a whole bunch of different things. And I'll be honest, I mean, for anyone out there that may be listening, young or old, that has experiences in a lot of different genres, a lot of different industries, it's really helped me in this particular industry understand and empathize and relate to a lot of different jobs, odd jobs, unique jobs, different jobs. And it's really given me the ability to have a lot of, substance for conversation, right? Just basic conversation, because I have a lot of life experience in a lot of different things. And prior to this life, lived a whole nother life. And I think when people kind of learn a
Mm.
lot of my background, realize like, wow, random. How'd you go from there to here? And that's probably why we're talking about it today. But you take all of your experiences, you build upon them, you don't lose them. I think a lot of people get worried about bad decisions or taking jobs. Like, what if it's the worst job ever? Like, well, the reality is you don't know. And but you never lose your experience, and you never lose, what you gained in that process, or the lessons that you learned in that process. Hopefully, you learn along the
Mm.
way as you go. So,
Yeah.
and that's what I've done. And I try to retain as much information. At the end of the day, just keep a big heart for people,
Yeah.
and for hard work, and the jobs that sometimes don't get the notoriety or the thanks that maybe they deserve.
You told me during one of our prep calls where we were just kind of talking through everything that you really had to evolve and develop this leadership and finance brain coming out of that phase of broadcasting and acting. What did that mean day to day early on in your multifamily career as you think back on that time?
Yeah, it's a good question. Early on in my career, I think I learned kind of halfway through, but a couple of years in, that you can't just sort of make a career on smoke and mirrors. And what I think I did early on was, hey, this guy has charisma. Hey, this guy has an interesting background. Hey, he's able to connect with people. Hey, he's able to lease a lot of apartments really quickly. But as you start to move up and through in your career, you start to find yourself in positions where you have to you have to know what you're doing. I think as a young actor and somebody who has been blessed with some charisma, you've lived a lot of your life, whether it be as an athlete or as maybe as a student at times, but definitely as an actor and entertainer. Uh, your greatest strength is your ability to connect, whether it be with an audience or with people. And but now you're in a job to where you have to understand some of the basic fundamentals of the business itself. And unfortunately, I didn't walk out of college with a business degree. So anyone out there that wants to do the arts, I would recommend a minor in something else, or a major in business, or just understand the X's and O's and the basics of how business works. Because at the end of the day, my father, if he's listening, which he's not, always reminded me that everything is a business. And whether it be acting or sports or multifamily, everything is a business. Everything essentially happens to make some level of profit or revenue, or to be able to, give back in some ways if it's a volunteer organization. But nonetheless, every business essentially has the fundamentals of a business. And so I had to learn that. And there's no other way to learn than to spend a lot of time saturating yourself, both in the business and in the X's and O's of what you need to learn. And then also cultivate and build, a strong team around you that you can ask questions to and about to help you learn. And I think everyone needs to understand, and I think most people do just naturally, how you learn. Some people learn by reading books, some people learn by visuals, some people learn by a combination of in-person training, YouTube, however you learn, understand how you learn and go about that and spend the time it takes to learn. And I think that's what I've learned over my career. And even as I sit today, there's still a lot to learn, and learning takes some time. Oftentimes, I think as ambitious and smart people, we grow impatient with ourselves that we don't know everything right away. And I've just had to learn and be patient with myself that in time, if you put in the time, like working out or like anything else, you'll see results. But it does take some time, and you have to saturate yourself in what you're trying to learn.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Transforming Cities, brought to you by Authentic. Authentic delivers premier multifamily brand experiences and smart digital marketing. Our proven approach aims to accelerate leasing velocity, boost rental rates, and increase long-term value. Simply put, we see brand as a business asset. You can find out more at AuthenticFF.com. Let's jump into your multifamily trajectory so far. And I say so far because you've had a great multifamily career already, and obviously it continues today. But early on in your career, you were with Avalon Bay, I believe you started with, and you regarded that time as a life of sacrifice. And I want to know why that was. What was that time period like as you were young, whippersnapper, coming out, guns blazing?
Yeah, so first job in this business, got it because I wanted to save money on rent, and I thought I could lease an apartment to somebody. And I think I might have mentioned, I've told the story before that, my first interview, no one showed up for. They forgot that I had the interview, so I had to go back a couple times and say, listen, I think you're missing out on an opportunity to have me work for you. And I didn't know what I know now, but I eventually convinced them that hiring me was a good decision, and yes. So I jumped right in with Avalon Bay. It's a big REIT out of Virginia, but really provided me some strong fundamentals in the business, helping me understand some of the core basics of our business, from customer service to to the basic business X's and O's, from leasing to occupancies to basic, just the basic understanding of our business. I had good mentors around me, and really what helped me in that time, I had a great regional manager, if you will. I forget their positions, but he oversaw a portfolio. Randall Caraway, if he's listening, which he's not, I'm sure. But Randall really, he really put me in positions to be successful. And within a 3-year span, I probably worked on 6, 7, 8 different properties within the Southern California area in a very short amount of time. And I think what he determined, looking back on it now in the positions that I am, hey, this kid really, everywhere he goes, builds relationships, is successful where he's at. He works really hard. He's trustworthy, and he makes a difference, and in a positive way. And so I think every 6 to 7 months, he would shift me into a different situation. And I think he saw that, Tony made a positive difference everywhere he went. And, he gave me great opportunities to be exposed to different submarkets, different cities, different properties in a very short amount of time in my early career. While a lot of my peers were unwilling to do a lot of that, at the time, I think a lot of resistance came to him from them to say, well, it's a little bit of a drive, or, it's not exactly the property I want to work at. It's not perfect. I said yes very often and very frequently. And listen, saying yes isn't the golden way to get things done or to get experiences. And you need to be strategic with your no's. But young in my career, I was determined to learn as much as I possibly could. So to me, that came with a lot of yeses. Sure, I can do that. Sure, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, give me a chance, right? And so, so that was my time at Avalon Bay. I look back on it very fondly, and with a grateful heart that they really put me in the position to be successful very early on in my career.
I love the point about saying yes early on. And I think it's phrased a few different ways from people I've read over the last few years. But this idea of just putting yourself in a position to understand what's needed at the company, or understand what's needed from your leadership right out of the gate, to make yourself useful, to make yourself revenue generated, and having a mindset of a leader so that you can just jump in, be active, take ownership over some responsibilities that, as you said, other people don't necessarily want to take ownership of, is super
Yeah, and
important.
opportunities came my way because other people said no,
Yeah.
and I was willing to say yes. And it depends where you are in your career. I'm in a different position now to where maybe I could say no more often. But in that early stage, I was just anxious and ambitious to learn as much as I can. If there was somebody that was willing to put me in a spot that I could learn from, I saw no reason to ever find a way or a way to wiggle out of it. And most of the time I was completely underpaid. I think that's important for anyone listening. I was not paid glamorously. I worked on some lease ups that were good, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the experience.
Something else that you mentioned to me was this idea that you needed to form discipline to shift away from the things that you realized you weren't as good at, and really focus on the things that you were good at and were finding success in, to get better at those things. Talk about what that mindset was like early on in that career path.
Well, this is something that I still sort of, I don't want to say wrestle with, but I think there's two different sort of focuses. I think fundamentally in business, we have, and I think we're trained to focus on the things we're not good at, right? So every evaluation you have with your supervisor, it's usually about, um, about the things you need to work on, things you need to get better at. Even in school, I think it's set up in that way, right? This test, you missed these ones, as opposed to you got these correct. And I think that's just part of sort of American culture. I think business culture as well, is just to really point out what you missed or what you're not good at. And so early in my career, like everyone else, I continued to focus on that. I took, I would tell people, my peers, I eat feedback for breakfast. And it's true, I did. I came from a Portuguese Italian family that feedback and constructive criticism, we'll call it constructive, just to be nice. But feedback was given often. As an athlete or an entertainer, it was like, you missed that opportunity, or hey, you could have executed better here. So as a young child and a young adolescent, I got good at taking that feedback and realized, especially where it was coming from. In my situation, it was coming from family members and maybe coaches and other people, that it was coming from a good place that, looking back on it, I think they saw that I had potential and I was willing to take that feedback to get better. But as I've sort of evolved and grown in my career, and kind of done some research on this, I think oftentimes we hyper focus on what we're not good at, or what we are not naturally inclined to be good at, or focus on, or want to get good at. And we really don't spend a lot of time, focusing on what we're naturally gifted in. And over the last couple of years, I've really sort of made a shift in my mind, and I've encouraged others to do this as well. But it's been most important for me to say, listen, you may not be the best at this, you may not be the best at that. That's okay, but you're really good at this, right? And you're really good at that. Like, do more of that. Pour more of your passion and energy into those things. And what I've seen, just from a formulaic standpoint, is the more I've done that, the more exponentially I've gotten better at the things I'm already inclined to be better at, right? And so I've gone from probably 0 to 10 faster on those things than the other things that I'm not naturally inclined to be good at. It's probably 0 to 4, right? Versus 0 to 10 on the things that I'm naturally gifted in, things I enjoy, like spending my time in, all those sorts of things. And so I think when people say, find a job or find a career or find an industry that you're good at, that you enjoy, that utilizes your skills and strengths, there's a lot to that. I think we kind of just breeze past that statement and not really realize the importance of that. And I think a lot of people are in positions or jobs or industries that they have no interest in, and frankly aren't really good at. And so I would urge those folks, if that's you listening, to really kind of unpack that a little bit. And it's not the worst thing in the world to leave a job or an industry. Maybe it's the best thing in the world that you can do.
Let's talk about your next stop with Sequoia and this what I like to think of as this pull towards Texas that occurred around that time for you.
This magnetic
Someone,
draw to
someone,
the
yeah,
Lone Star State. Yeah.
yeah. What was that? What was that experience like? What were you up to with Sequoia, and
Yeah.
what was what was that stop
Yeah, that
like?
was a great experience. And so, yes, this magnetic pull to Texas. Uh, I don't want spoiler alert. My wife's originally from Texas, so that was probably some of the magnetic pull. But Sequoia Equities was a great time. I was actually there 5+ years. I got a chance to not only be a community manager, property manager in the ops division, but of course, I was quickly identified as somebody who had unique skill set as a marketer, as a trainer. That was at the time like social media was becoming a thing as well. And so I got to dabble a whole bunch there and really do some fun projects and investigate kind of what this whole new social media manager job was. This was probably 12, 13 years ago, 15 years ago,
Hmm.
gosh, a long time ago. But this was when, social media was hitting the scene in a real way, right? Facebook was kind of the main platform. Twitter was around, but not, really relevant in probably multifamily. Not sure it even is today per se. But those were before Instagram, Snap. Even before LinkedIn was even like something that you should consider. So great experiences there. I got a chance to spend some years in ops and learn under some great leaders, as well as spend almost 3 years as the marketing, training, and social media regional manager. And so I would travel the Bay
Hmm.
Area, oversaw 25 to 30 different assets, overseeing their marketing needs, their training needs. So as a background as a teacher, I really enjoyed training. And so, that also helped me understand how to teach and train adults, which is different than children.
Hmm.
And so, but really kind of taking a step back in all of it, I've realized like that helped me understand property operations and really our business kind of full scope, right? Like how ops and marketing and training and all those divisions, how they're supposed to work together. Now, Sequoia did a great job of, kind of connecting all those pieces. But the reality is, those departments, whether it be at your organization today or somewhere else you've been, or just the industry as a whole, sometimes they're a little disjointed. And I think the companies that are the most successful are the ones that really figure out how to partner together with all support divisions and ops to deliver at the end of the day the best service for residents and the best really experience for employees. And and so there I got some early chops to kind of understand how these departments work together and just understanding, you know, different benchmarks and KPIs from a marketing standpoint and training standpoint and social media standpoint as well. So, it's probably no surprise to anyone today, like, oh, this dude is so good on LinkedIn or he knows how to post. Like he was a social media manager. Like, oh, that the jig is up. I mean, for those who have been following me for a while, have always known that. It hasn't been any surprise. It's on my LinkedIn profile. But yes, I early on understood the psychology of social, and I do probably more than most today.
Yeah.
And there is a subculture there that people are interested in, and frankly, there's a lot of stuff that people are not interested in as well.
And I would say too, cutting your teeth in both online and offline environments was
Yeah.
probably a really unique experience for you as compared to some of the, next generation coming up now who doesn't really live in the offline environment very much, but you sort of saw both, you evolved with both. And now you're at a place where obviously you're succeeding online very well, but you had the opportunity 10, 12 years ago, as you said, to be part of the shift, not only with social media at large, but also that shift in multifamily too.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because yes, online, I think there is uh, there's a formula, and there's and you play with the formula. You take a look at the engagement levels, you look at the algorithms, right? You look at what hits, what strikes nerves, and to me that feels more scientific than anything. There's an art there, but there's much more of an art in the real life interactions with humans, right? There's the ability to read body language. There's the ability to sort of sense, uh, emotions in the room, right? A tenseness or a nervousness or an excitement or a happiness or whatever the case is. And so you have to sort of hone these antennas to be successful in business. And so, yes, I got that experience and being in a lot of different offices, many of which early on were like, who are you? What's your position and why are you here? And so I had to build those relationships pretty quickly and build some rapport. So I had to figure that out. But I'll tell you, what's been interesting, and a few people that know me in real life and understand kind of what's happening online for me as well, is, when I meet people in real life, there's a weird pressure to live up to an online persona. You may sort of feel that a little bit as well when you interact with people in conferences or, and early on, probably a year or two ago, that really would kind of throw me out of sorts a little bit. I think I tried to live up to maybe what people thought of me. And I quickly realized, like, that's not the way to go. Be you, both, in your voice online, but also be you in real life. And the more you can do both of those things, the less you have to worry about being someone you're not. And believe me, early on, and even to this day, I mean, I think there's probably a percentage of people out there that are like, oh, smoke and mirrors, but
Right.
they're the chip on my shoulder that continue to allow me to drive, to prove to them and myself at the end of the day, it's not smoke and mirrors. It's a 10-year, almost 20-year career. I just happen to be, better online than most. And but I've been still in the grind in the foxhole like everyone else.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back to that. So let's put a pin in that conversation piece, because there's a lot more to unpack there, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Let's talk about Alliance Residential in Embry before we jump into that, because this was a big shift for you and your family. You moved from California to Texas. You joked with me and you said, wow, everything is a lot bigger here, kind of moving from the smaller home to the bigger home. And what were the stops for you in Texas? Because I know that was, as you said, your wife is from there, and you kind of had that magnetic pull. But I know that was a big transition, just from California kid, Hollywood, to Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah. So in California, we were trying to get to Texas for a couple of years, and I would have a lot of phone interviews and other things. And it just, for whatever reason, it just never panned out for quite a while. And I was at times discouraged. There was an opportunity that I got the verbal offer, and I just, I rescinded because it just, I didn't think it was the right fit, right company. And of course, the days after making that decision, I felt, did I make the wrong decision? Was that going to be my last opportunity to get to Texas? And why we were getting to Texas is my wife's from Texas, cost of living. We had our second child at that point. We wanted to continue to grow our family. We loved California, but just cost of living and a lot of other factors really played in. So, but I got that opportunity, and Cliff Sandlin believed in me. Cliff, if you're listening, he's still a friend, and he gave me the chance to come to San Antonio, Texas, with Alliance Residential at the time. Beautiful property here in San Antonio, overseeing kind of as a senior GM of a big asset here. And although I felt I was ready for that next level, I was willing to take sort of a lateral move just to get me to the state. And listen, I knew nothing about San Antonio, Texas. Maybe like a lot of your listeners, I had to Google the Riverwalk and Spurs, and I had to find, parts of town that people were like, the only safe part is this part. And it turned out to not be true. And these were Californian people telling me the safe parts of San Antonio and the place I want to have my family and all these sorts of things. Anyway, so we rented a little, actually a decent sized home on my income. My wife really has not worked in the workplace, since we had our first child back in 2009. And so we get an 18-wheeler truck. We get a moving truck that was not paid by the company. We put our money down, and we sight on scene. We show up at the house in San Antonio, Texas. And let me tell you, it was like September, which in most places in the country, it's starting to feel like fall. In South Texas, it is still very humid and hot. And so I remember getting down here thinking, oh my God, what is this humidity? Asking every cashier in the grocery store, do you ever get used to this? All sorts of things. And those of us who are from California, we're very weather bougie. And so, we think any weather is an issue. In my family today in California, it's like, they check on my weather daily and tell me when I have a T-storm coming. So they're very interested in that. But yeah, so I figured out San Antonio pretty quickly. I just tried to acclimate. Some advice I got from a friend that was from the South who lived in California was, don't bring all that California swag to Texas because Texas has its own swag. And so I said, copy 10-4, loud and clear. And I just did my best to acclimate to the state of Texas. And I tell everybody that, they warmly embraced me and my family. Probably had a lot to do with that. I had a Texan wife, than this California kid bringing all this Cali swag to Texas. But it was a great experience. I was with Alliance for a short amount of time. A lot of stuff happened. Cliff ended up not being with the company a long period of time. And then ultimately I got an opportunity with Embry. They took another chance on me as a regional manager. And that's probably helped rocket ship my career there the most, at least as it stands today. Initially, coming to Texas, they gave me a lot of opportunities to be in front of a lot of different important people, from developers, investors, owners, clients, and just exposed me to a whole bunch of South Texas. I spent a lot of time in Houston and San Antonio. I had some great leaders there that really took me under their wing and really helped develop me as a leader, held me accountable, weren't buying into the BS of Tony smoke and mirrors. They really held me accountable to know my stuff. And, I look back on them and I'm grateful for them holding me accountable to get better at my day job and get better at what I do every day. So yes, that was Embry, and it was a great experience while I was there. But, and I'm sure you're going to lead up to RPM here momentarily.
I am, but I first want to take a stop at something you said to me, which I really love, and I'm sure the folks at Embry will appreciate this too. But you said to me that these people are not effing around. They kind of call bluffs, and they want to see you succeed. And you spoke so highly of them, challenging you to get good at operations and to, obviously lean into your eclectic side, but also get to know that you can be really good at operations too. And I thought that was really, looking back at some of our earliest conversations about this recording, that struck me as a really passionate and deep-seated feeling that you had for that opportunity. And I think it really was it felt to me like a switch in your career that's really helped you move forward into RPM today.
Yeah, my supervisor at the time, the president of property management, Cindy Ash, who's now retired and living her best life, she took a chance on this California kid at the time, but I think she saw a lot of potential in me, and she was not going to let me continue to grow my career on my charisma or good looks, as she would say. She's going to make sure that she makes a damn good operator out of me. And so there was many times my wife would laugh that on a Friday I would, in a panic, realizing I'm behind on a report or a budget, call her in the stairwell, fairly stressed and anxious, and saying I'm going to have to work all weekend, and I hope that's okay. And she's been awesome, obviously, throughout my career. But she would, I get it. You got to learn. You're doing it, and so I would work all weekend, crunching numbers and working on budgets and financials, and look back on that those are the moments, those are the long night, overnight study sessions, right? That you learn and get really, good at what you're trying to get good at. And I look back very fondly, and I really appreciate her leadership and her unwillingness to let me squirm. And, I guess it had something to do with my maturity and my willingness to not squirm or just say, well, you know what, this is too hard, or you're not letting me live my best life, so I'm just going to leave. I stuck around, at Embry for a good 7 years of my career.
Yeah.
And longer than any other tenure that I was at any other company. I was at Sequoia almost 6 years, but so I learned a lot of lessons. I grew up a lot there, and that's probably one of the times, places that I realized, listen, you can get by on a slick presentation and a good look and some charisma, but at this level, as a regional manager, you really have to know what you're doing, and these owners and clients expect that of you. And so so I worked really hard, and after a few years, getting a lot of positive feedback from clients across the spectrum to my boss that, we love Tony and he's doing a great job for our asset. So that stuff meant a lot to me.
Yeah. I want to pause on career stops for a minute and come full circle back to your flourishing time on LinkedIn. When I really first dedicated myself to LinkedIn, it was, gosh, it's only been maybe a year and a half ago now. You were one of the first people that kept popping up day after day after day. Who is this Tony character? What's he all about?
Spam.
Want to look into him. And, but you actually have this really sort of sweet, unique story here, and one that I'd love for you to share with the audience about how that started, and there are roots that tie back to the pandemic.
Yeah. So LinkedIn has been an interesting journey for me. I've been on that space 10 plus years, and really started to become very active 7, 8, 9 years ago when it was really when I started with Embry. We didn't have a robust recruiting department, and I had to find people in different markets. And listen, I'm in Texas. I'm from California. I don't know anyone in Texas. And I'm overseeing San Antonio and Houston, and I'm like, I know nobody, right? Like, I'm not involved in any associations. I'm from California. People are probably looking at me like, oh, he's from California. He'll go back soon, I'm sure. So I had to start like utilizing and understanding the platform. And I realized very quickly that the most amount of candidate eyeballs are in just a few places, and LinkedIn was one of them. And so I started to play in that space and get creative with job posts and engagement. And I think I probably harkened back a little bit on my social media manager days about engagement and understanding how that works and how a social media conversation differs from a real life conversation. There's different norms and there's different cadences and uses of script and words that you can often use to just kind of keep a quick interaction happening. And so I start to dabble and I start to get really successful at recruiting people through this platform. And I start to, I think before most, see the power of this platform, right? The power of connecting and networking and growing your network. And I quickly realized this is where the eyeballs are, right? Like I'm fishing where the fishes are versus, 20 people in a networking room. Like, okay, well, that's 20 people. I post something here. Back then I can get, I don't know, 100 impressions, 150 impressions, 250 impressions. I don't know, super small scale at that time, but it was more than 25 people in a networking room, half of which are just, the association people there, facilitating the event. Right. So I was like, right. Okay, well, this is a numbers game. It's a volume game. And I think I'm pretty good at it with my background in social media and then just my, relatability, just natural gifts. And so, so I start dabbling in the space. And then for me, and it's actually a post that I'm sitting on today that I haven't posted yet, but the pandemic, for some of you that know me, was a complete game changer for me in a lot of ways. And really the game changer was I was entangled and ensnarled by fear of the virus, of other things. And I was not the person or the leader that I knew I had to be in that moment. And I knew big moments like this, crisis moments, global moments, are when the best leaders rise. And I didn't feel initially that I was rising to the occasion. And so I had to work through that process of entangling myself or untangling myself from fear. And fear, like a lot of other things, can be an addiction, and it can be incredibly entangling. And if anyone knows, if you have kids, if they've tangled laces, to untangle that ball of a mess, or if you have a daughter with wild hair like I do, to untangle that is a process. And so I had to go through that process. But in that process of untangling myself, a freedom and a newfound liberation came from that. And I think we all realized as a country, and I think the world, that things could go sideways really fast, and you only have one life to live, and you have your truth and what you believe, and why hold back now in speaking it or sharing it. And so I started to say, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And I love quotes posted by Mark Twain and some of these, other quotable folks, but I have a few things I'd like to say, and you know what? Frankly, I don't care. I'm going to sign it, and I'm going to make it my own thought because I have them, and I've worked through some things that have made me a better leader on the back end. And so I started to just with I think optimism and positivity, and sometimes a photo shoot with a smile. Put a quote or two of what I really strongly felt about leadership and what was happening in our business and how we can overcome a lot of it. And I think both strategically and probably organically, it started to grow and build what you would call an audience or a community, and it's just sort of organically and naturally grown since then. I think my voice, for those who have followed me for some time, has evolved and probably matured a little bit, and also become more poignant. Hopefully, also more clear about what I believe and who I am, and who my family is as well, and they make a big impact in my life. And something also in that platform, which I was really encouraged and maybe emboldened to do early on in that platform. If we all recall, LinkedIn, you weren't supposed to talk about anything other than your job opening or business. And I quickly realized, like, there's a lot more to our lives than just that. I also understood that nobody wanted LinkedIn to become Facebook, and no one today does either. But I'm going to talk about my family, and I'm going to talk about some of the emotions that maybe people in leadership positions are not willing to talk about. And I think there is an audience that found that refreshing, and to this day, I think there's quite a few that find that vulnerability refreshing and encouraging. And I think there's a big community that we're all dealing with a lot of the same things. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. Burnout is a real thing, right? There's these themes that are all happening that we're all experiencing at the same time. And why can't we talk about them? Today, it's a lot more, it's a lot more accepting to be able to talk about a lot of these topics. But 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it wasn't, let me tell you.
Yeah. One of the first memories I have of checking out your stuff, Tony, to be honest, is you mentioned this to me in a previous conversation. It was signed TS. I'm like, who is that? What is TS? And I look back and I was one of those guys. I'm thinking TS, what does this guy quote? And then TS. And you actually told me in the previous conversation, you're like, people probably think I'm crazy quoting myself. Who is this TS guy? And now that I see that though, I think I saw one this week or last week. It's like, oh yeah, man, that's just Tony doing his thing. Really appreciate it. Cause no one else is doing it still. No one else does that. You're one of one, and it's kind of just, it's fun to watch. It's cool to be a part of that tribe, just following along and getting insight from time to time.
A funny story of that, man, it's kind of next level, but me and the fam, like, I got TS merch now right at the house. So my kids got TS hats and
Nice.
and t-shirts, because it's just, it comes from this philosophy. For example, my kids don't have LeBron and Kobe and Jordan posters all over the room. They have a few of them, but what they actually have all over their room is photography and photos of themselves in every league and every sports team that they were a part of. And I haven't shared this story. It actually makes me a little emotional, but it was a thought that I had to say, I want them to, when they rest their head at night in their room, or when they're in their room, my 14-year-old's working out now, is to look up, at that poster of themselves, like scoring that touchdown or making that catch or high-fiving one of his teammates and being like, that guy's a badass, right? And and I believe in him. If nobody else does, I do. And that's important. Why it gets me emotional is because I'm talking about my kids, but it's what I believe in myself, and it's what I believe in my team members and people at my company, but it's also what I believe in my children, that I want them to have that mindset to believe you're a badass, because if you believe you're a badass, you become a badass. If you believe you're not good enough, you become not good enough, right? If you think you're an imposter, you are. If you believe you can do the job, you can do the job. And it sounds cliche and it sounds simple, but the reality is the power of your mind to believe you can do something is something that has just overwhelmed me with the magnitude and power of what that is. And so believe me, to this day, I'm sure there's people that see that TS. You've come along, right? And like, I get it, right? Like, he's doing his thing, and I commend him for it. There's still probably 10%, maybe more, maybe less, that are like, that's pretty arrogant of the guy. The reality is it's me doing me. You do you. If you want to sign your stuff, fine. If you don't want to sign your stuff, don't sign your stuff. But I'm going to encourage myself first and foremost, I'm going to encourage the people around me. I'm going to, of course, encourage my family. So I haven't shared that story a lot, but in my kids' rooms, they look around and they see cool moments of sports and other achievements that they've achieved. And I want them to believe in themselves, because really nobody else does except for your family and yourself.
I love that. No, I think that's a really good point. You mentioned your team in that recap, and I want to talk about your team nowadays, which is with RPM Living. You've been there for, I want to say, 18 months or so.
Yeah.
You just seem really comfortable with that team, and I'm curious where you find your quote unquote pocket is today, because it just feels like you're settling in, and I want to hear from you what that is.
Well, I just want to say, RPM bringing me in and elevating me into the leadership position they did, I forever will be grateful and am thankful. And yes, I think, it takes some time to settle in, to learn kind of the company norms, who you work side by side with, who's above you, who's, supporting you. Yes, a year and a half in, 18 months, give or take. I usually tell myself 6 months, kind of the acclimate is the organization's probably evaluating, is this the right fit for them? And you're probably doing the same thing. But year and a half in, it feels like a sweet spot. It's a wonderful company full of wonderful people, great leaders, looking to really sort of revolutionize the industry and bring some of the best talent there is in multifamily here to RPM and work in some of the most exciting markets across the country. I happen to be in San Antonio, which is a fun, exciting market. It's sort of the stepchild to Austin, Houston, and Dallas, but it's definitely growing, which is exciting to be. It's actually a bigger city than people realize, and a lot funner things to do than just the Riverwalk or the Alamo. So anytime you're in town, Chris, let me know. But it's been wonderful for me. It's done amazing things, both for my career in real life and, of course, in this larger audience as well. It's given me opportunities to be on shows like this and conference circuits and stages, to be able to not highlight myself as much as I think maybe early on in this sort of communication process 3-4 years ago. Now I see this platform and this opportunity both at RPM and within the industry to highlight people like you and people on my team and RPM itself, to really kind of give back and shout out amazing people and people doing some really incredible things. And so my friends here locally call, reach out to me and say, hey, can you reshare this or comment for reach or whatever the case is? And then they say, it's great to have friends with algorithm benefits, Tony, which I find cute, but I'm happy to play that role for people that I know and trust and that are trying to do the right thing. And so that's fun. That's fun for me now in the position I am. But RPM is an amazing company, and it's continuing to grow across the country. And I'm really excited to continue to grow with them as well.
What's I guess doubly exciting about RPM is that you were recently, I guess, repositioned into a new role with the company that just the news just came out recently. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you moving forward. Are we going to see more of you on LinkedIn, less of you? Are you going to be on the conference circuits? Like, where can we find you?
Well, you may see more, you may see less, but yes. So new exciting role that I'll be, as people know now with RPM, in more of a national spokesperson role. So Vice President of Marketing Relations is the title. So I won't be spending as much time in operations as I used to. Will I be continuing to contribute to larger conversations within the organization about ops? Of course, right? I've been doing it for 20 years. But will this give me an opportunity to make a bigger impact for RPM on the national stage, both with associations, local associations, conference circuits, and across the board? Yes. And I think where I feel greatly privileged is an amazing company that's as big as RPM is, for them to be able to come to me and say, hey, Tony, we see what you're good at. And we see that you're really uniquely skilled and gifted in this space of communication and messaging and connecting with an audience and connecting with people, both in real life and in grand scale. And we want to put you in a position to do more of that for our company, for you. And we think by doing that, it'll continue to be sort of a magnetic draw to amazing talent throughout the country, to bring them into what we're doing. That's happening a lot even now, but I think as we continue to, and I think as tools become more available both for me and others in my division to be able to sort of get that message out to a greater audience about what's happening. I think the sky's the limit at this point. And the cool thing for me is I don't know anyone else at any other organization that's even thinking about doing something like this. And so hats off to my organization and the leaders there for them to see, hey, I think we got kind of a unique cat here. And let's figure out how to well position him to make a big impact for RPM in the industry. And listen, I'm here for it, and I'm excited for it. So just a ton of ideas, a lot of stuff I can't share today, but I think a lot of stuff in the next 6 to 8 months that you're going to see that is going to feel different and going to continue to, I think, engage a larger audience as well. So excited about it.
Really cool. Yeah. Congratulations on the
Thanks.
on the shift. That's big. That's big. I think that springboards into something here as we begin to wrap up. I'd love it if you could speak to, I don't know, I'll call it, or I'll think of it as the oddball part that we all have, right, deep inside. And maybe you could give us some advice about how to just let things go a little bit more often and be ourselves. Because I think you talk to this, you preach about it, you do such a good job of it yourself. And I know it's a work in progress, of course, but I think you're one of the few in the industry that has done this really well. What advice do you have for me? What advice do you have for the listeners and the viewers today?
I think it comes down to not taking yourself as seriously as we do. I think we think of ourselves as super smart and accomplished and all of those great things. And that's good to have confidence in that, but I don't think you should think of yourself any more highly than you should. And frankly, at the end of the day, I think, I don't know, people don't really care about that. I think people care about how nice you are. I think people care about how much courage you have and how willing you are to be yourself in the face of critics and others putting pressure on you to be someone you're not. I want to be someone for my kids and my teams that, sort of puts myself out there in a way that isn't just like everyone else. I have never found it interesting to me to be like everyone else. To me, that sounds like an incredibly boring multifamily world. And maybe I'm trying to bring some spice to that. And maybe I'm not. And frankly, at the end of the day, I'm just being myself. So if I am, awesome. If I'm not, I'm still being me. And, I think that's a big thing. But ultimately, I think not taking yourself as seriously as we do sometimes. A lot of my training as an actor helped me understand that vulnerability is strength. And I think as business associates and running our businesses or teammates in a business, we're so scared to let people in, to see that we're goofy or we're odd or we snort when we laugh, or all these things that we get caught up in, like, how embarrassing. The reality is it's not that embarrassing. And the reality is we're also not 16 years old anymore, right? Like when you're 15, 16, everything is totally embarrassing. We are grown adults now, right? Like this is life, like stuff happens. And it's okay to just admit it, laugh about it, learn from it, be sad about it. And it goes back to the proverb itself, right? Is like, there's a time to be happy and there's a time to be sad and there's a time to be inquisitive and, all the emotions that, there's a time for that, and embrace that and be present in the moment that you live. Because when you're 80, 90, 100 years old, and your time is up, I don't think you're going to want to wish that you postured better or peacocked more. I think you're gonna wish, as you see these quotes, that you loved people more, that you had the courage to be yourself more, even if it wasn't acceptable in your circle or a greater circle, but you still have the courage to be yourself and to be true to yourself. So hopefully that encourages anybody there. Believe me, there's still work that I'm doing in this area. This is an endless, I think, masterpiece that you're trying to create in your life, to just be more yourself and the more authentic self you can be. So, and you'll never perfect this, but the more you could strive for it, and be willing to lose opportunities or get in trouble for being authentic, then I don't know, were those opportunities worth it? I would say yes.
Tony, man, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I really appreciate your time. So many knowledge bombs dropped in the last 55 minutes or so. Incredible. Thanks for being on. I always like to end with some rapid fire questions just to get the audience a little bit more insight into you and your life. And the first one I thought of, which was the best one I could think of for you and your personality, is what's the best dad moment that's happened in the last year or so for you?
Oh man. Well, the last year and a half, what's really fun for me now is my 14-year-old is working out and he's calling me. He just got a phone and he's texting me throughout the day about workout techniques and if he's doing things right. So I commend him, and I've really put it in his head that if you want to see gains, as the kids call them, form and technique is going to be key to doing that. So that's been fun. He's growing into a young man and becoming a good young man. But he's texting me throughout the day, and sometimes I'm in meetings and I'm like, son, I can't take your call about, is this the proper leg form on this squat? And so, but that's fun for me to kind of evolve from kind of his, him being younger into, not that I'm his friend, but, kind of his workout partner at this point.
Yeah. Really cool. Okay. So one book that you would recommend right now would be what and why?
So two books really, but I Love It Here by Clint Pulver. He's a guy with great energy, hits the stage, great author, but he really talks about how to create atmospheres and cultures that people love working in. And I think he does a great job in this book. It's called I Love It Here. So I've read it. It's a great book. One other one I just do want to mention, it was early in my career, is Touch Points by Doug Conant, former Campbell Soup CEO. The work is in the touch points. The work is in the interactions with your team and touching in on moments and projects. Those shouldn't be cumbersome for you as a leader, that you have to touch in and check in on your people. That is the work. That is the emotional work that you're doing. So awesome. Snuck in two there. Sorry.
You did. That's okay. Well, hey, there's only one more thing for you, for us to do for you. And that is, roll out the digital red carpet, right? So tell the world what you're up to, where they can find you online, and of course, follow along with what's next with your career at RPM.
Yeah. So like I said, in an exciting new role. So I think you're going to see a lot more of both myself and RPM on bigger platforms. And, I think hopefully the voice and the message and communication will continue to remain exciting, highly energized, very authentic. We're excited to kind of go behind the scenes a little bit there. So yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to obviously follow both RPM and myself. But I'm personally on all those channels as well. Same with RPM, but Facebook, Insta, I'm not on Snap or TikTok, but if you do the other social platforms, you'll learn a lot more about who my family is than maybe if we're just connected on LinkedIn. I'm definitely, I'm a storyteller on stories on Insta. So if I know you, I am private. So if I do know of you or you're connected to someone I do know, I will accept, or you can send me a message, of course.
Love it.
And then, Facebook is Facebook. So,
all right, man, Tony, again, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an honor to have you on, and can't wait to see what you do next.
Well, I'm excited, man. Thanks for having me on.